Hi, in this presentation I am going to give you an overview of our paper towards understanding waiting in video games. Waiting is present in nearly all video games in one form or another. The first example that comes to mind for many people is loading screens, but the waiting situations players encounter can be much more varied than just that. For example, many games that involve resource collection, such as farming or fishing, often require the player to wait before obtaining new resources. Another common use of waiting are cooldown mechanics, where players need to wait for a moment after using an ability before they can trigger that ability again. Different types of waiting can affect the player's experiences while playing the game in various ways. Often waiting situations are associated with feelings of boredom or frustration, but they can also evoke feelings of anticipation, excitement, or hope. Understanding these differences is important for game designers and researchers, as the way waiting is used in the game impacts the player's overall experiences while playing. The goal of our paper is to first understand what types of waiting situations players encounter in video games. Furthermore, we want to explore how these situations affect players' experiences and how they can be categorized and further analyzed. To reach these goals, we first conducted a literature review on the topic of waiting in games. Based on its results, we then prepared a survey where we asked participants to describe different waiting experiences they've had while playing. Finally, we conducted thematic analysis on the survey results and identified 5 perspectives into how waiting in games can be analyzed and discussed. In the literature review, we found 25 articles discussing topics related to waiting in games. We organized these papers into categories based on their commonalities. These categories are models of time in video games, games with waiting as a core game mechanic, mathematical analysis of game situations, games as a research tool, and other discussion. Based on the findings from the literature review, we identified several research gaps in existing literature. Firstly, as few of the articles found in the review discuss waiting as their central subject, there is no comprehensive overview on the topic. The existing papers focus mainly on certain types of games, such as idle and social network games. This leaves waiting in other game genres largely unexplored. Furthermore, some aspects of waiting are only briefly discussed in existing literature, such as the uses of waiting as an introspective or a social activity. To fill some of these gaps, we conducted an online survey on the topic. In the online survey, participants were given a questionnaire of 6 open questions, which asked them to describe different experiences they have had with waiting in games. The questions prompted participants to describe instances of positive, negative, and meaningful experiences. The dataset collected in the survey consisted of responses from 16 participants. In addition to players of video games, the participants included game developers and researchers. After the survey responses were collected, we conducted thematic analysis on the dataset. As the first step of this analysis, 1 or more codes were assigned to each data sample. After the coding process, the codes were organized into categories based on overlapping meanings or shared themes. In our set of codes, we identified 5 different perspectives into waiting in games, which will be explained next. The first perspective, causes of waiting, focuses on sources of waiting in video games. Based on the waiting situations discussed by survey participants, we developed a 2-dimensional categorization system for the causes. Firstly, causes of waiting can be categorized either as in-game or off-game waiting, based on how essential they are to the core gameplay of the game. For example, ability cooldowns or turn-based gameplay are instances of in-game waiting, whereas waiting during loading screens or advertisements can be seen as off-game waiting. Secondly, causes of waiting can be categorized based on their source. We identified 4 types of sources for waiting: clock-based, event-based, human-based, and technology-based waiting. In order to understand the experience of waiting in games, it is relevant to understand why players are willing to wait in the first place. This is the focus of our second perspective: player goals when waiting. Based on the survey results, common goals for waiting include receiving new items or resources, advancement in game progression, gaining access to new game content, being able to take certain actions in the game, being able to start or continue playing the game, and being able to enjoy the game's music, art, or story. When a player chooses to wait for something, they enter a period of idleness which they have to fill with a different activity. The third perspective, player behaviour when waiting, focuses on common player activities during waiting situations. Based on the survey responses, we identified several different uses of waiting time. These include thinking and planning activities, as well as activities related to learning and observing, relaxation and processing game events, and socializing with other players. The fourth perspective, felt experience of waiting, focuses on player emotions during waiting situations. When discussing negative experiences, many participants brought up feelings such as boredom, frustration, and annoyance. On the other hand, positive feelings that can be evoked by waiting include anticipation and excitement. Additionally, several participants brought up waiting situations related to games, narrative, and art as meaningful and rewarding aspects of waiting. We found that players could also appreciate seemingly mundane experiences of waiting in games. For example, one participant described their experiences of waiting for public transportation in World of Warcraft to be meaningful, associating them with a sense of deeper immersion in the game world. Another participant described how they felt that waiting, although inconvenient and tiresome, made certain gameplay outcomes feel more significant by giving them more weight or value. When players become familiar with a game, they learn which moments require them to wait and plan their gameplay with this in mind. The last perspective, player reasoning and decision-making, addresses how players make decisions around waiting in the games they play. Based on survey responses, waiting can affect which parts of the game a player chooses to interact with. Several participants describe situations in which a waiting requirement during their primary activity caused them to explore alternative parts of the game. Some participants additionally describe instances where a repeating waiting situation led them to find creative ways to shorten the waiting time. In addition to decisions made during gameplay, our findings indicate that waiting can also affect when players choose to play and how long their game sessions last. Moments of waiting can discourage players from playing and lead them to ending their game sessions early. To conclude, waiting is a part of games and game mechanics across game genres. It affects players' experiences, decisions, and behavior during play. Well-designed waiting can improve the play experience and support immersion, while poorly designed waiting leads to negative impacts. This is why it is important for game researchers and developers alike to understand the different aspects of waiting in video games. Thank you.